Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I am Sheetal Kalantri, and I am the founder and director of the Roundglass India Center, as well as a law professor at Seattle University School of Law, where I focus on comparative law, India law, and legal institutions. I'm so delighted to have this incredible panel here with us. These are just the dream team. If we could have found one on US India agriculture, we did. I wanted to welcome everyone in the audience and welcome their professors here. There's experts here. We have Dean here, as well as people on the Zoom who are joining us from India, from Canada, from Washington, D.C. We're also very, very delighted to have Suresh Sharma, who is the head of Chancery at the new Indian embassy that has been established in Seattle to further our relations. Yes, we are welcome and thank you for joining us. What I would like to do is to introduce our moderator, whom I know very well. We go back to our prior institution at Cornell. And he's been doing agricultural work in India for decades. His name is K.V. Raman. He is the adjunct professor in the School of Integrative Plant Science and serves as a faculty fellow at the David Atkinson Center for a Sustainable Future at Cornell University. We're delighted to have him and welcome him to a newly minted Seattle resident. His journey at Cornell initially commenced in 1993. Making the inception and became a prolific career dedicated to international agriculture and rural development. Prior to joining Cornell, he was a program leader at the International Potato Center in Lima, Peru, leading the potato and sweet potato pest management research. So he brings with him a team of experts on agriculture who will talk about it from various perspectives. So without further ado, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. So, it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you, Seetal, and for the amazing work which you're doing in Roundglass Center. And we are really very the incredible progress which is being made in the Roundglass Center in terms of connecting with India gives us great hope when it comes to agriculture and food. So I approached Seetal, thanks to Shannon here for having put this together, and gave this idea that, why don't we consider something in the area of agriculture and food? And she immediately jumped into the idea. And here today, what we have done is we have brought in about, some of the best illustrious personalities who would share with you some of their ideas and partnerships which they have done between US and India. Before I introduce you to them, just a brief introduction about US-India partnerships. If you go back to the past, India got its independence in 1947. And at that time, India was considered to be food deficient. A lot of people would say that India, would turn into a begging bowl. But then a person by name of Norman Borlaug came into the picture, who got the Nobel Prize in 1971, and then Green Revolution happened. The Green Revolution brought a lot of benefits to India. From a food deficient, India has become what we would say food sufficient country. It's also exporting major commodities now outside. So India has become really a big agricultural hub because of the Green Revolution. But during that time, we had the Rockefeller Foundation, we had the Ford Foundation, we had USAID, we had USDA, lots of groups which were interested in bringing out that revolution. But now what has happened recently is that we have had the problem of climate change. When you travel into India, I was recently in Punjab with the Roundglass Center, where they're trying to set up a model farm of about 300 acres. And when you go around and talk to farmers, whether it's in the breadbasket of India, wherever you go in India, you find water shortage, you have higher temperatures, you have major issues with climate change. When you come back to the US, climate change is a really big issue. So given all these challenges, what we were discussing with the panel was that wouldn't it be nice that if we had a grand Marshall Plan between India and US, where the two governments would come together, sign an agreement similar to what was done during the Green Revolution days, where could bring a revolution when what we would say climate resilient, nutrition sensitive agriculture. So with that little background and looking at future partnerships, of course, there's the Gates Foundation, which is now involved in India. There's the Bezos Fund. It's called the Bezos Earth Fund, which is also doing a couple of projects in India. There are other foundations which are involved, and I know there are Grow Further is here, a couple of our Gates Foundation is here. They will explain to you. But what we really need now is a grand Marshall Plan between the two countries. And I think our panelists today, they are going to highlight some of the big challenges and where we think that these partnerships can go into the future. So without you, and I think given the time constraint, I don't want to go into the details of each and every the detailed bio, because you have been given some promotional literature. You could look at their bios online. So the first person who would probably give his ideas on the global sort of a scenario, taking a global view, is Sonny Ramaswamy, who's sitting next to me. He's the president of Northwest Colleges and Universities and former director of the National Institute for Food and Agriculture. And under Obama, he implemented the plan for what we call the Agriculture Knowledge Initiative. It was the Obama Sing Initiative. And his department has done considerable work in terms of implementing that plan. Next to him is Girish Ganjyal, who is the professor of food science at Washington State University, and tremendous experience in the area of food processing, value addition, and post-harvest loss. And he will give us some opportunities in terms of between US and India, what kind of partnerships can be done. Vijay Raghavan has come in all the way from Hyderabad, furthest away from all of us here. So Vijay, thank you for coming, joining us from India. He will explore opportunities for partnerships between India and US. Basically, we are talking of sustainable partnerships, because majority of the partnerships which have happened with donor funding has been either 3 years or 5 years. So sustainability is a big issue. Next to Vijay is Meetu Kapur. We welcome Meetu to Seattle. She's the newly appointed director of nutrition who has joined from Delhi. The Gates Foundation, which is right here next to us. And Gates has been involved in a very big way, both in Africa as well as in India, in terms of promoting rural livelihood. She will be addressing or at least giving some ideas about undernutrition, malnutrition, and what is Gates trying to do in terms of promoting partnerships between US as well as India. Peter Kelly is the founder and CEO of Grow Further. Grow Further is again based here. It's a local foundation which is currently promoting lots of projects in Africa. But he is going to be involved and he will give his views in terms of what are the views of Grow Further in India and how is he trying to connect the Seattle community as well as others into India. So with that, Sonny, please give your views.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Katie, first of all, for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I'm truly honored to be here with this group of individuals. I want to thank Shannon and certainly the Roundglass India Center of Seattle University as well. And Cecil, thank you so much for hosting us here at your institution. In the intro, Katie said that I am with the Northwest India Commission on College University, based out of Redmond, Washington. I'm an accreditor now at Seattle University as well, along with many other institutions in the Pacific Northwest. But my background is from the perspective of being an entomologist. I'm one of the world's experts on insect sex, by the way. So you invite me back to people and I'll regale you with some great stories about insects to do. But today, really, I want to take a bit of a historical context and share with you some thoughts on what the possibilities are. I want to paraphrase the cliche that we use, but for the grace of. Rather than putting the word God in there, I want to frame it as, but for the grace of John Foster Dulles, but for the grace of Norman Borlaug, but for the grace of Swami, I wouldn't be sitting here. This guy wouldn't be sitting here because we're a certain vintage, maybe Vijay Raghavan and his father, maybe this young man too. In part because, as Katie said, India was a basket case. There were famines and droughts and, children. There were images here in America on television of Indian children not too dissimilar to what we see from East Africa today. The big bellies, hunger, and poverty, and things like that. I grew up poor. I grew up hungry. I know there were days we went with very little food growing up in a single parent family, and our mom raised us. So I got an education at an institution that was established with an agreement between the United States and India in 1955 that John Buster Ellis agreed to, that resulted in the creation of what we refer to as land-grant universities in India that were created by American land-grant universities like Kansas State University and Ohio State University and others. I went to one of those schools, as did KV and some other individuals as well. And that was the start. And, that was in 1955. And Norman Borlaug comes along. If you don't know him, look him up on the web. Borlaug, the father of the Green Revolution, comes along, figuring out how to take wheat that would be all, and the bane for farming is beautiful crop, and the winds blow, and the rains come, the hail comes, storms come in, it is gone, the crop is gone. He figured out, based on Chinese spring wheat, what the genetics of dwarf wheats are, and then he was able to get that incorporated into various types of wheat across the globe. He got the Nobel Peace Prize for having fed 1 billion of us to baby meat. And so that's the historical context. By 1973, India became a net exporter of grain, from being a basket case to being a net exporter of grain. That's the historical context. The possibility to partnership, the possibility to bring innovation is what it's all about. And you fast forward to today, as Katie said in the introductory comments, we've got some very significant societal challenges. The whole world is being subject to this. But it's going to be particularly that much more intense for countries in Asia, in Africa, and in South America as well. We're facing right here in this, as you know, we live in the area. We just saw last week, we saw a drought being declared. We have a drought, in part driven by climate change, in part because of human activity that we've got. This is an existential threat that we've got. But add to it, diminishing water resources, significantly diminishing water resources across the globe, particularly in India. Land resources. We don't have enough land. We don't have enough water. We don't have enough of a workforce, by the way. People don't want to go into agriculture because our everyday comfort. We've got there's individual sitting here with the Indian consulate here in town, right? Most people in India want to go work in Bangalore or other places at these call centers or maybe the IT sector and things like that. We need young people to go into the agriculture production business, in part because we got to make it more profitable, more sustainable as well. That's something that we got to come up with innovation. So there are other challenges, societal challenges. Poverty, hunger, all of this we see. How do you go ahead and deploy? We've got the brains. It's not that we don't have the brains. We've got the capacity, the capability to do this collectively. And the intent is to bring it all together in the form of innovations that can support these things. These innovations, they cover the gamut from genetics and breeding all the way to smart systems. I was talking with a professor who was here at Seattle University, Shiny Abraham, I think, right? Shiny Abraham. She's working in electrical and computer engineering. We're talking about the Internet of Things. How do we apply these smart systems? There's some amazing things going on in this town in Microsoft, where I live in Redmond. There's a Farm Beats program. There are those technologies being developed that absolutely can be downscaled and incorporated at the level of these subsistence farmers. Absolutely. It doesn't need to be only for these big 40,000 acre ranches and things that we see in America. That's a possibility as well. So there's some India-specific issues that we need to be really, really concerned about, and the opportunities that are there that derive from partnerships. That's going to be the basis of it. And as KV said, what is that new Marshall Plan for the youngsters in the audience here? The Marshall Plan, going back to post-Second World War, is what allowed Western Europe to be what Western Europe is today, that we see in Germany and in France and all these places that had been completely destroyed. That's what we need, right? And we need that sort of a thinking that brings together the best from across the globe, including within India. There are amazing technologies being developed, there are amazing people there. Those resources being brought together in this form of a partnership. And that's what I hope we can pull together collectively. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. That's wonderful. You've set the stage, and now I think we need to look at what's the challenges in terms of, both countries, India as well as US, have post-harvest losses. There's also a lot of work which is going on in the area of value addition and processing. So we'll have Girish, please go ahead and give your views in terms of what kind of partnerships you see.
Sure. Well, you had to put me next to this guy. It's hard to follow that. But thanks for letting me be here, and thanks for all the organizers as well. I appreciate it, and good to see all of you as well. So my background is more in processing. So anything, I was talking to somebody, I said, I know nothing about growing a crop in the field, but I can do a thing or two about once it's harvested, how to add value to it, and whether it's increasing the shelf life or adding more nutrition or making it more tastier to eat, right? That's kind of what I work in area. And I worked in the private sector in the US, and then I'm been a faculty at WSU for the last 11 years. A lot of my job, actually, I work with companies, whether it's mom pop shop all the way to the multinationals here in the US and also internationally. So a lot of what I will say here in the next couple of minutes is my exposure to that, or what I have seen in the recent times, right? So when you think about taking agricultural crop, whether it's fruits, vegetables, or grains, obviously we all can't just eat it as it is for a long period of time, right? The fruits will get spoiled, so you have to convert that into some shelf life product. So what I have seen is, here in the US as well, right? Let's say the state of Washington, it's an amazing state, and the amount of the fresh vegetables and the crops we produce is fantastic, right? And so there's opportunities for the farmers here to be able to, get these products out in India, to India, and so that they can be profitable as well, right? But at the same time, I think in India as well, there's a lot of different crops that are grown and which are not being processed into value-added products or increase the shelf life. There's a lot of losses that happen, right? So I think there are opportunities that exist with the exchange of knowledge for enhancing the shelf life or enhancing the nutrition, taking it into different forms that are more acceptable worldwide, right? So there's that opportunity there, but also in terms of the crops itself, what is they're grown there and what is grown here, exchanging those as well. Because here you can see, you can get, people want tastier, more customized. It's the taste, our taste buds have gone, tremendously exponentially better, or advanced, I should say, right? So we can get a lot of things from India that can help people here meet their needs. So by exchanging the knowledge with the processing, I think both countries can benefit tremendously. For example, recently I've been working with pulses that are grown in this state, actually. So we grow a lot of chickpeas and peas and lentils, and India is a big consumer of that. But over there as well, their taste buds have also enhanced, and now they want more value-added products. So this could become a very good opportunity for both the countries to exchange, both in terms of the knowledge as well as for the crops itself. So that's one area. And the other big part, I think the opportunities lie, is the food safety. So in India and here, the food safety systems are very different. I mean, obviously, in this country, the food safety system is much more advanced. And, I feel lucky to be living here because, and I think all of you should be, because a lot of what Sonny was saying, there's so many people who have done great things and established this system for us, right? And without that, we wouldn't be having what we have today. So food safety in India, there's opportunities for a lot of improvement there. And I think what we have learned here over the last 30, 40 years can be easily implemented and bring that system to a greater level. So there's that opportunity. So let me stop there because I know we're
Good, yeah.
out of time. So I'm gonna.
Thanks a lot, Girish. I think, the next panelist is Vijay Raghavan. He is the CEO of Sathguru Management Consultants, and he's also the regional director for Cornell in India programs. And he has headed and coordinated many, many partnership projects. So your views, Vijay.
Thank you, KB. I think the element I think that Sonny brought in terms of where India was is really, I mean, I can connect it emotionally. Even as far back as early 2000, we still had, almost about 300 million population earning less than $2 a day, looking forward to their, daily intake of nutrition. I think the transformative element is at least the last 10 years, that segment of less than $4,000 income communities at least get their daily nutrition available. And it's all thanks to digital innovation that's really made distribution possible. I think that's one single transformation I see in India today that's been game changing at that level of community. And typically it's because of the digital innovation that a lot of American corporations really partnered together to make that happen today. But more than the bottom of the pyramid, I think aspirationally, India is certainly witnessing the second largest growth in food consumption, next to China. Typically, what we see is that by 2030, the overall food market in India at about close to $1 trillion will just be same as what the United States is today. So that's a massive expansion of the food system in the country. It's happened mainly because of two factors. One, innovation coming into farm end of it, in terms of seed, crop protection, etc. And today, a third of the Indian seed system is from the American partnerships that are there in India today, the large companies that are bringing in. A lot of them have pursued global research right in India today on the tropical crops, and that's been a major contributor to that. I would also look at one great revolution that's happened in India in cotton. This was the transgenic technology that came from the United States to India. India was the 10th, cotton producer in the world. We transformed ourselves to the largest cotton producer in just about 2 decades, adopting a very innovative transgenic technology. We have, of course, gone past the United States, and soon we're going to go past China in that. So it's been a transformative growth for India, 10 million hectares being adopted with the novel technology. We see similar innovation also coming into crop like apple today. This is apple state as such. So American rootstocks and apple varieties are now transforming Indian apple growers. It's been a decaying, crop in the country, but it's come into a transformative productivity of almost like 8-fold on account of innovation that have come in there. So I think there is a lot of things happening at the farm end of it, but the major element is also on the food value chain. One of the things I've seen in the last decade from 2014 is that India is the largest globally compliant Food Safety Management Act compliant entities in the world today, next to the United States. So these are ones that are providing food to the whole world, but also to the United States, and therefore, they fall under the ambit of compliance there. And that number is growing. So we have an FDA office in Delhi, which is, very few countries that have the privilege of FDA office being there. We have been, of course, leaders in the pharmaceutical end of it, supplying almost a quarter of generics to US market. But food is the element where I think transformative change is happening today. And that brings numerous partnerships for us to explore in the area of dairy, in the area of pulses that Girish talked about. In adding value to plants by way of nutraceuticals, we are one of the largest producers of nutraceuticals for American markets today. Health foods, things like that. I think these are expanding baskets. That's important. But I think the key driver as we see moving forward is sustainability. How can we work together? That's where I think deeper partnerships are required. We are one of the largest methane generators in the whole world because of the largest world cattle population. So that's something we need to be concerned about. We're also involved with water use, efficiency factor that needs to be manifold for us to manage our farm productivity. I think those are elements where greater partnerships have opportunity to contribute. I think we look forward to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Vijay. And I think, the private sector, the agribusiness sector in the US looks at India as a huge, big market, which is what Vijay was trying to expand to. So we have with us Meetu Kapur from the Gates Foundation, which is located in Seattle. The Gates Foundation has been a really major partner, I would say, when it comes to enhancing rural incomes and rural development. The Gates Foundation has been involved in Africa as well as in India. The Gates Foundation is also a major supporter of the CGIAR, which is the consultative group for international agricultural research. These centers were the ones which were responsible for bringing green revolution in India, and they're also developing, fantastic technologies which can be used through partnerships. So Meetu Kapur is just arrived, and I think, she's going to be heading the nutrition program. She's the director of nutrition. So Meetu, please go ahead and let us know about what the Gates Foundation is doing. And
Thank you so much, KV. And I will just caveat that what I will say only does not represent only what the foundation is doing. I want to draw on a little bit of my prior experience having worked in agriculture and food in the country as well. So I think I want to start by saying that it's important to recognize the inflection point and the shift of relationship between India and the US. For a very long time, as we've heard, it was the US for India, where it was looking at really getting to food sufficiency. But what we're really seeing now play out is India and US for the world. And a lot of that is being framed by the 3C conversation around climate, the conflict that we see, as well as COVID and its recovery, as we're seeing. Just last week, there was a huge delegation that was mounted to India from the US with about 40, 50 companies visiting. And there's been a huge shift in also that trade relationship over the last several years. We are seeing markets open up, trade, sort of tariff rationalization, and India offers a really resilient market as well when it comes to the US. So, laying out the trade narrative, which is creating the shift in the relationship as well. But then what I want to lay out is maybe through 4 examples, the different ways we're seeing partnerships evolve. One refers to what KB talked about, which is sort of the CG system. And a lot of the work and some of the work that the foundation is also doing with IRI and others is looking at more climate resilient varieties. Rice, for instance, which is a staple, we know it suffers from challenges with, water use, but also drought. And so there are new varieties. For example, we've seen the Sehbagi Dhan variety being introduced, which is drought resistant. And that becomes a very important part of our continued sustained engagement, and which is where I think for both countries, it becomes very important. It's also taking what India has to offer to the rest of the world. Millets, for instance, so looking at hardy crops, which in the future in countries like Africa and the other parts of the world will be a lot more resilient in terms of delivering nutritional value. And so there's a lot of space to be able to create convergence around shifting, the framework from climate resilience to really nutrition resilience for the world. And that's how I see that partnership play out. Another interesting example, which actually is beyond just agriculture, but looks at the dairy livestock sector, came out of, COVID and really the revival of looking at One Health. And that's a program that the foundation has been involved in terms of setting up that capacity within the country in partnership with the government. This is really the intersection of animal health, human health, and the environment. And what we're focused on is how do we strengthen labs with the capacity to be able to actually detect. The second is how do we look at digital disease surveillance and reporting and better communication mechanisms. I mean, imagine a disease like brucellosis results in almost a loss of, $3 billion worth of loss when it comes to livestock. And so it's partnerships like that that enable one, resilience, but also as we look at us becoming one global market, just the confidence in terms of how some of these things are being addressed in addition to, of course, livelihoods. The third example is something that I work on fairly closely is the focus on large-scale food fortification. And I think as we recognize that with shifting climate, we will have cropping patterns shift.
We don't know if we'll be able to grow rice in the countries that we grow rice in. We know there's also an impact on crop nutrient quality. And so large-scale food fortification, which has been around for 100 years, becomes even more imperative as an integral part of that strategy. India has the largest social safety net program running with, fortified rice being delivered through the public distribution system, being fortified with iron, folic acid, and zinc. And that's a fully government-owned funded program. But where we're really coming in is to be able to support with a lot of the enablement on how do you look at technology for rapid testing, for instance, in the field? How do you look at digital quality control to ensure the efficacy of what's being delivered in the system? And that's really where partnerships on looking at what solutions sit from a technology standpoint that can be transferred across becomes a very interesting area and avenue of partnership as well. It also is something that allows us to take this, to other parts of the world where we are implementing similar such work as well. And the fourth example I want to call out is just in terms of the way I think partnerships will look in the future and the way they're emerging. So some of you may have heard of the I2U2 framework, which is India, Israel, UAE, and the US having come together to partner on various fronts. But what is interesting is when you look at it just like a topic of food security, and you look at the way the different actors are coming together. So there is a huge investment that the UAE is making to set up integrated food parks in the country, which focus on reducing food loss, food waste, better nutritional security. But it's not for India, it's for other parts of the world. And the US is coming in with looking at really innovative financing structures over there. We're looking at technology solutions from Israel when it comes to water use efficiency. And I think that shift in the way partnerships are constructed going forward when it comes to nutrition resilience is what we should really be able to sort of start to think about more meaningfully and see what more can we do to be able to ensure we have a nutrition secure world. I mean, malnutrition continues to plague us, and it is something that India has been working on, but there are challenges. And so I think acknowledging where we are and sort of seeing how we can work collaboratively offers a huge inflection point. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Meetu. So we have another foundation here, which is the Grow Further. Grow Further is again a home-based, Seattle-based foundation. And we have Peter Kelly, who is the founder and the CEO, and they have been doing some work actually in Africa, which he will let us know. But now Grow Further has interest in getting involved in India. So Peter, your comments, please.
All right. Thank you, KV. Grow Further is a nonprofit organization working in global food security. We are actually not a private foundation. We believe that everyone deserves food and that anyone can help create a food secure future. And we exist to address two related problems. One is that agricultural research has a great track record in improving global food security, as we've heard through examples like the Green Revolution earlier today. And scientists around the world have lots of great ideas about how to help smallholder farmers adapt to climate change, improve income and nutrition and things like that. But it's hard for them to get funding, particularly for things like underutilized traditional crops. The second problem that we address is that in general in the United States, individuals are very generous, outgiving foundations by about a 5 to 1 margin. But in the agricultural research area, it's very difficult to get involved as a donor or a volunteer without making it a full-time career. It's not like medical research where there's lots of places to donate to and volunteer to and lots of people do it. Agricultural research, the future of food security, it's much harder to get involved. So we are primarily funded by individual donors, which is quite different from most of the agricultural research sector that is funded by government agencies or foundations. We put out grant announcements looking for research and development proposals towards big goals like helping smallholder farmers adapt to climate change, improve income and nutrition, things like that. without having a technically specific or prescriptive agenda. We basically fund the proposals that have the biggest potential to engage farmers, to get adopted by farmers, and to get adopted by large numbers of farmers through partnerships with government, private sector, and other stakeholders. And then we educate and engage our donor members and the general public. We made our first grants in November, both of them to universities and research institutes in Africa. One of them was in Ghana to develop the first commercial variety of Bambara groundnut, which is a type of bean that has a lot of benefits, but has not gotten much research attention. The other is a machine learning based smartphone app in Tanzania that helps farmers identify crop diseases at an early stage. And these projects are getting they're getting international media attention, even though they're not that large in terms of budget, but they're disproportionate in terms of media attention and impact. The reason that I'm here today is that Grow Further is interested in expanding into India in the near future. We see huge potential for our model in India. India has millions of smallholder farmers, scientific research capacity, the capacity to not only serve its own farmers, but also serve Africa and other parts of the world through agricultural research projects. There's great potential for engagement of the Indian diaspora as donors and volunteers. The diaspora has interest in science, a propensity to give, as well as high income, and then within India, there is a strong and actually legally required corporate philanthropy sector that we would also like to engage. So we are planning to work with partners who understand the context and the regulatory environment and so on, and start with a few projects and grow from there, as we have in other parts of the world. But in terms of the details, we're still developing the strategy as far as the details. In Africa, we put out a grant announcement, and when we got 700 applications. In India, that may not be the best approach. It might be better to use more of a private sourcing approach. So that's one of the strategies that we're in the process of developing right now. So we are organizing a focus group or individual feedback to help us design our India programs in the way that makes most sense in the context, and can help create a food secure future in India and beyond. So we welcome the participation of those in the audience in that process. We also have a public event coming up on May 14th. You can find out more about us at growfurther.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So you've heard, the panelists here. In sum, the benefits are both ways, US as well as India. The economic benefits, when we look at it, trade becomes very important. When you look at India, India gains a lot because it's got these huge challenges of climate change. US also benefits because it has huge challenges of climate change. So it's a win-win on both sides. So I'm going to open it up for some questions during the last 15 minutes or so, which we have. We could take some. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chief and Shannon, for organizing this. When we started this partnership talk
Let me get
Seattle Setu.
Let me
Yeah.
get this. Can you start over?
How far back was
Seattle Setu was in September. Yeah, it's almost going to be a year. One could never imagine that we would have such level of conversations. And thank you for the council office to be here too. You all mentioned Norman Borlaug. I'm familiar. I'm an economist. We study Norman Borlaug, but you also know that Green Revolution has become very controversial in
Right.
India. Agriculture is a very, very sensitive subject in India. Garib Kisan, in the context of recent elections, is something that has been used by a member of every stripe. And Kisan, the farmer is poor in India. It's not, and the smallholder kind of productivity studies that people have done is well known. So what I wanted to know from any one of you is that when we're talking in terms of big agribusinesses coming into India, there's also the challenge of how these agribusinesses can actually impact small farmers. BT cotton is very controversial. BT brinjal has been very controversial. Meetu, you might know of some of the nutritional impacts on livestock of importing genetically modified seeds has been. So that at that one level, I'm concerned about what we are getting. On the other level, in India, organic farming is booming. I just returned from India last week, and people are eating millets. There are organizations that are doing traditional farming methods. So I feel like the Setu can be the other way. Like India can be providing advice to climate mitigation as well as climate adaptation. And then to round this off, because I'm an economist, and I see kindred spirit in Peter here, I always worry about the financing of this, right? And I feel that climate finance has become so controversial. What I would like to see from the United States, the bridge this way, is funding for small schemes like micro insurance that help farmers mitigate against rainfall deficiencies, for example. So, I mean, I know it's a wide net of questions, but I'll be happy to listen to your expert opinions on either of those.
Sorry. I can take a shot at it. Nunashi, thank you so much for articulating some of these controversial conversations that are going around, not just within India, it's across the globe as well. But there's a bit of a false dichotomy in what you just stated. The approach that I would encourage us to take collectively is sort of an all of the above approach of addressing these existential threats that we've got. It's not either or, it is all of the above. We need technologies that are going to help us address these very significant challenges, particularly this idea of nutritional security that we need as well. It's not just food security, but truly it is nutritional security. Now, the intent, the development of technologies and innovations and things like that should be scale neutral. And the idea is to help the smallholder farmers, and we need to, that's why I said we need to ensure their profitability and sustainability. If we don't do that, then it's game over. It's toast, right? You can't, in the Indian context, or in many other parts of the world, you cannot bring in this big agriculture, industrial agriculture we have in America. It will not apply in that context. What does apply are there are innovations and technologies being developed that are apropos to the smallholder farms as well. Okay, but what we need are innovations not just on it's through that continuum, the entire continuum. On farm, we need a whole bunch of climate resilient crops and varieties and breeds of animals and things like that. Onto post-harvest, the supply chain aspects of it, that we have very significant issues across the globe that we have to deal with. Onto post-harvest, post-consumer, the food waste we were talking about earlier in the hallway across the street is we have a very significant loss of food that is being thrown even in India. We've got this bimodal distribution, the haves and the have-nots. The haves are, throwing food in the garbage, and the have-nots are struggling as well. So we need some technologies that are apropos to that context within the Indian context, not just taking technology from here. We should not do that. That is inappropriate. This I2U2 that Meetu was referring to offers a very, really, really cool possibilities to think of these technologies that can be downscaled in quotes, which I was referring to, and then apply to the context of the Indian farmer as well. And I'd say that in and of itself, genetically modified crops, there's nothing wrong with it. okay? And there are no toxicological implications, and you and I can talk about it offline if you want me to, and we can have a conversation about it. But per se, there is not, okay? And so we should not start out a priori saying, well, we're not going to accept this technology, but we'll accept this other technology. I think there are some great possibilities to think of too.
I was just going to add one more point. You mentioned about organic agriculture and how small scale. In India, there's a lot of small. We all know that there's a lot of small farmers, and that is also here too. If you look at just Seattle area, we now tend to go to like our farmers market and look for local produce, local crop. And what we see is even for those small farmers around here, if you go to Skagit Valley, they have 1 acre, 2 acre lots, and they grow crops and they try to sell them into markets. But what happens is they cannot generate income throughout the whole year, right? So what we do work with them is like, to see how they can transform that into a value-added product, but by gaining or transferring technologies to them, right? So the same thing, I think there's an exchange, and it has worked here. And it does work in other countries too. So there's an education piece, I think, that has to happen for small farmers, so they understand that, if they grow a crop, they're not, stuck with, okay, whatever price the broker who will buy it from them, they are the dictating it, right? If they understand a little bit of processing, as Sonny was mentioning, we have to look at all those supply chain aspects. Then I think, we can address and add more value to the system. You have anything else?
I just need to, emphasize one element. If you look at the grower or farmer in India about 20 years ago, they were depending on subsidy, right? That drove their sustenance. Small farms, obviously. In several states, India is such a diverse country. Several states, farming is today an entrepreneurship, right? They're looking at, creating profits out of farming and bringing innovation that can transform their lower down input cost, increase their output value. And that's transforming today, be it cotton or be it anything else. Even in soybean, we are the largest grower of non-GM soybean. We are the largest exporter of non-soybean meal today to the rest of the world. Because that's a whole protein that we are shipping out to the rest of the world. So I think it's innovation that drives the smallholders, quest to be making it profitable, not to depend on subsidy. There are a few states still where that's not transformed itself, but this happens in a lag in many, many states. But you do see that farmers are now wanting to be entrepreneurs, just not one depending on subsidy for them to live themselves.
I just very briefly wanted to acknowledge the tension that you talked about in terms of large agribusiness and small farmers. And I think we've seen over the last decade a lot of structural changes happening with collectives in terms of farmer producer companies becoming more the model, especially one, aggregation of demand, but also easier to work with the private sector, but also to be able to have better negotiating and bargaining power, right? And I think it's important that we play into those structures as partners to ensure equitable access. Because if we don't do that, we will never be able to scale, solutions. And so there is that tension in the room. There's also, what are the products that are being produced? What's the profile of those products? Are they high in fat, salt, and sugar? What does that do to NCDs? And so I think it's acknowledging that applies to both countries and making sure that what we're doing is right. So I acknowledge the tension. Absolutely.
Okay, we have one question which I'll take from the remote, panel, because there are about 80 people who are connected online. Let me take one question online, and then we'll come back to okay. So the online, I think what they're asking here is there is low farmer income, which we just talked, significant post-harvest losses due to lack of storage facilities. And this is having a big impact of partnership and trade between India and the US. What role can organizations play? What kind of partnerships and, in terms of improving storage structure, low-cost cold storage facilities, etc. So, Girish, you wanted to take that, or anybody else? Yeah, please, go ahead. No, go ahead. Anyone, yeah, please.
he has
Do it
brought-
short so that we can take one or two other questions
Sure.
from, yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to Indian supply chain, once crops are harvested, whether it's fresh produce or even grains, storage is a big concern, right? I mean, the infrastructure cannot, as of today, rather, from what I know, can't handle the amount of the crop they're producing, right? So there's a lot of output from the farm, but we can't hold it together better. So, but here, for example, I'll bring up one example. Apples, the apple industry in the state of Washington is big, right? We supply all around the world. We faced here too many years ago, right? The CA storage technology that was not there just a few years ago. But once that technology came into existence, and now we can store an apple a whole year or even longer, and it still stays fresh, right? You pull it out of it, it's still. So the technologies have come a long way, right? And of course, the whole IT innovation and mechanical engineering innovation has expanded or exploded, right? So I think we can, there is an opportunity there about how can we use existing technologies to develop small scale storage facilities or take existing storage facilities in India and see if we can enhance them or retrofit them, for a lack of a better word, to make it more usable for and longer storage. So I think there is definitely opportunities there, both from a smaller scale perspective as well as bigger scale, because there are a few bigger scale, but then the small farmers again will be in a disadvantage. So we really have to think about like, what can we provide for a small scale regional facilities that can help them.
We got about 5 minutes, so
Right.
quickly we can take, and then we can take
So-
two questions here. Yeah. We'll
so
take
going
one
back
from
to
you and
the-
one from you.
Going back to the I2U2 program, going back to Israel very specifically, and the innovations that they have developed in the post-harvest arena. And the idea is not just developing silos or, storage bins or whatever else, but really also bringing growers coming together. Because individually, I may not be able to afford it, but collectively, we might be able to go ahead and afford some of these sorts of storage facilities and things like that as well. So those partnerships are really, really important. When you think about, aside from, fruit and vegetables, a lot of it is rots, onions rot, you get this incredible harvest, and then the market is inundated, the prices go down, and a lot of the onions, they rot. And having that sort of an approach to dealing with storage, and you can store it for long enough that you can spread this out. Also better varieties of crops that can be brought in, that can be harvested at different times. Because unlike here in the temperate zones where we have these seasonality, in countries like India being tropical, you can indeed have multiple crops as well. So again, thinking of those public-private partnerships and all that, and what this opportunity that's afforded here for Seattle University and Setu to consider as well is to convene these sorts of partnerships to come together and to be able to help, smallholder farmers in India and other countries as
I
well.
just want to add, in the new Prime Minister's plan, India is going to be planning to be the world's largest storage facility. And they're going to get the best of the best knowledge from anywhere. I mean, that's the current plan. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, the people online.
They're online, so they can hear you, so you can use the mic.
Thank you for all your insight. My name is Sanjeet. I'm not very familiar with the agriculture space, but I am, I guess, close to a lot of family back at home in India that are farmers. So I'm interested in, how do you provide support from people that live in maybe Western countries back to families back at home that are farmers on a personal level, in the knowledge that you provide in regards to technology and partnerships? How do we do that and create that impact on a personal level for our communities back at home?
Okay. So, yeah, we'll take one more question and then we can round it off because we have about 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, please go ahead.
No, mine is, in all this discussion, we seem to be avoiding the big elephant in the room, which is what has happened with our Indian agriculture scenario today. Hardly 2 years ago, the Indian government brought about a very major transforming reforms cutting across the agriculture sector. 3 major acts were brought in. And unfortunately, with a lot of problems that arose, which would have really transformed and covered all the questions which have been raised today. Right from the input side to the output, to technology, to financing, to everything. 3 major acts were brought in. Anyway, to cut a long story short, that got bulldozed for a variety of reasons on all sides, from the farmer side, from the government side. I mean, I had a personal interest in that because I was involved with it in framing many of the articles there. But that was one big revolutionary, how do I put it, a complete game changer for the Indian scene. There was a time when Mr. Ramaswamy mentioned when we used to import our food. Forget import, it was literally aid, PL 480.
Yeah.
And from that time onwards, I remember way back in 97, we were back in the wheat market. We were back trying to purchase because by 80s, the point is that we need to focus on this change which is going to come about. It's going to happen. And this will really take care of all the questions which you have raised.
Yeah, on your question about supporting farmers on the ground, we work through the whole network of agriculture universities. There are more than 75 of them in India today. They are the arms that really go to the support of the growers, just as you have university system here. And they are well connected today in most states. I mean, there are a couple of states where they're not probably active. So they are the ideal point of learning and knowledge for the growers there. So we continue to work with them quite extensively.
Every village has a KVK, Krishi Vigyan Kendra. So there's a saying in India, if you take a stone and throw, within 20 kilometers, you would find a KVK. So all the farmers have to do is, they can connect and they can get information. India has transformed quite a bit when it comes to farmer knowledge.
If I may respond to your question. What we need is political fortitude, appropriate regulations, policies. And I think, again, going back to Meenakshi's comment about being an economist, I think what we need is sort of rethinking of how these policies need to be developed and how they need to be deployed as well. But really comes down to political fortitude as well.
So I think we have come to 1 o'clock, and anyone wants to make any final comments, or please go ahead, and then we can close the session. I think we're getting to one. Yeah.
Thank you again. Thanks for doing this. But just to address one point to that is there's for processing after, because that's where we are headed to, right, in India as well. There's organizations, like for example, in Delhi, there's a thing called NIFTEM.
Yeah.
And like that, there are about 4 or 5 organizations which work on processing aspects. So value added, that's a great resource. Okay. And then just to add or conclude is to, the policy making is important because that has to happen. And that's where all the stakeholders at both locations have to come together.
Yeah.
And without that, I don't think, things will move that fast, right? Especially in India.
So I want to thank all the esteemed panelists here for having taken the time.
Please join me in
Thanking everybody here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.